A man very capable at these types of conversations and, for that matter, these types of debates. Vermont's independent Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, let's begin with the budget debate itself. But instead of asking you about what you would cut and what you wouldn't cut and what you think about the Republicans, if you don't mind, I'd love to get your perspective on what you could do, what I could do, and what everybody in this audience could do to demand a better process. We know that we're not getting good answers from anything in this process, and instead of complaining about it and pulling our hair out, obviously we have to reach a point where we can help improve the process.
Well, I think the way we improve the process is that millions of people stand up and they say to the president, Mr. President, you got to be strong on this issue. The middle class today in this country in many ways is collapsing. Poverty is increasing. The people on top are doing phenomenally well. Dylan, we have corporations making billions of dollars in profit, paying nothing in taxes. And what the president has got to say very clearly to the Republicans and to everybody is that this budget cannot be balanced on the backs of the sick, the elderly, the children, and working families, that there must be shared sacrifice. You know what? The people on top are going to have to sacrifice a little bit, too. And I think we get a good process when the president rallies the American people around the concept of shared sacrifice.
And to defend those with the least political representation who are always asked to pay the biggest price. Senator Tom Coburn was on with us yesterday saying, obviously, he wants to bring health care into this debate. I'm interested whether you think that that's appropriate. He also said, let's be honest, we're going to have to raise taxes, too. And this is coming from a Republican in the Senate. Is everything going to happen, basically?
Well, I think I'm glad that Senator Coburn said that. But I think when you have the top 1% earning more income than the bottom 50%, and when the top 1% have received hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks, you know what? They have got to join the United States of America. And they have got to be part of the process in solving deficit reduction. So, of course, the people on top and large corporations are going to have to pay more in taxes.
I want to connect the dots for a second on how we got up against the default that we're into, whether it's today, as China says, or 2 months from now, as Treasury says. Whatever it is, we're piled in debt, and we have to come up with a solution. We know that we're spending too much and we're getting too little. Over the course of, let's say, 1990 to 2008, in this country, as a group, politicians, banks, individuals, and it was a policy initiative really initiated through President Clinton, we created a tremendous amount of household debt, buying houses and everything associated with buying houses. When that became more than we could handle, we transferred all that household debt into the banking system through credit default swaps and all the complexity that people don't want to deal with. That is really where we hide all the debt. That blew up, and so in 2008, we transferred all of the household debt and banking debt into the U.S. government, where it remains, and now we're supposed to sit here and resolve this multi-trillion-dollar debt load that was created in the household environment, moved to the banking system like a pig eating like a snake eating a pig, excuse me, and now the American people are being asked to resolve it with poor people and old people. It doesn't make any sense, Senator.
No, it doesn't, and you've touched on a whole lot of issues. I would say simply this, Dylan, when Clinton left office and gave the White House over to President Bush, this country, as you recall, had a significant budget surplus, and the projections were that that surplus was going to grow. What happened under the Bush years is we had 2 wars, Afghanistan and Iraq, but we forgot to pay for those wars. We had the bailout of Wall Street we didn't pay for. We gave $700 billion in tax breaks over that 10-year period to the top 2%. That was not offset. We passed the Medicare Part D prescription drug program written by the insurance companies, unpaid for. You add all that up, you're up with a $1.5 trillion deficit today. So I think, given that history, it is extremely unfair for my Republican friends to say, well, now we're going to have to balance the budget by cutting Medicaid, throwing people off of health insurance, kids off of health insurance. We're going to have to redefine what Medicare is into a voucher program, substantially cutting health insurance for the elderly, cutting back on education, cutting back on nutrition, cutting back on infrastructure. I think that is grossly unfair.
I don't know that anybody who understands the facts could possibly disagree with you, which brings us back to the actual process. Is not the only solution to the creation of all this debt ultimately to what they say on Wall Street, write some of it down or cancel some of it. We have so much debt that was created with money nobody had through a collaboration between the government and the banking system. It's strangling our country, and until we actually write it down and restructure the debt as they did after World War II, how can we possibly free economic prosperity?
Well, you raised an interesting issue which would take more than a few minutes to answer, but you do raise the issue of Wall Street. In my view, and you and I have discussed this before, I think we are where we are now in the economy, in a terrible recession because of the greed, the recklessness, and the illegal behavior of our friends on Wall Street who are selling worthless financial products out on the market. And it disturbs me, and I think many Americans, that now, having caused the recession, these guys are doing phenomenally well. They're getting huge compensation packages while we have, in real terms, 15% of our people unemployed. So one of the ways that I think we should move toward deficit reduction is asking our friends on Wall Street to contribute more into that process.
All right, let's shift gears. So you're working on an efficiency contest or program in Vermont. We did Steel on Wheels back in Oklahoma. I talked to Michael Potts at the Rocky Mountain Institute, who pointed to this efficiency issue as the #1 issue. I want you to take a listen to him and then tell us what you're doing.
But we're constrained by rules that were created in the last century that really reward consumption and ignore waste. For example, in 40 states right now, the executives of utilities get bigger bonuses if they sell more electricity.
It sounds like you're trying to take on that exact issue.
Well, I have to say that I'm very proud that in the state of Vermont, we are leading the nation in terms of energy efficiency. And one of the projects that we work on, we managed to bring some federal money into Rutland County, Vermont, is we're seeing hundreds of homes being weatherized. That means they're getting the insulation and the other help that they need in order to substantially cut back on the fuel that those homes are using. We're talking about 20, 30, 50% reduction in the amount of fuel that homes are using, with commensurate savings to the homeowner. We're also obviously reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And you know what else we're doing, Dylan? We are creating good jobs in terms of retrofitting those homes.
No, it is the holy grail. And this is unlike money, which is kind of a pretend issue. We kind of make it up anyway. Energy is something we actually need to stay warm, eat, and prosper. Senator, it's a real pleasure.